Another day, another episode, another interactive exchange of ideas, perspectives, opinions on the mic drop, a revolution of a generation. And for today's program, we have a very, very special guest. I'm actually really super duper excited for this show, Nabeela Iqbal. Well, without further ado, I'm just going to say it out loud. Welcome to Relax Radio, and of course, especially welcome to the mic drop, a revolution of a generation.
Hi, Evan. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it so far, and I can't wait for us to get into the conversation.
That's amazing, Tina Villa. So, for anyone hopping on board, welcome to the show. We are going live on our YouTube and Facebook pages, and reminding you to as always, follow us on our social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and also do hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page so you don't miss out on special programs just like this one. And also, you can download the Relax Radio app that is available completely for free for both iOS and Android devices. So you know what you got to do: head on over to your Apple App Stores, your Google Play Stores, hit that download button, have us running in the background so we can guarantee you great company as always. And with that said, of course, diving right into the most special and the most important question for today's program, Nabila, why the love for tea? Why do you love tea so much?
I'll be really honest. When was really young, I did not like tea, and I didn't even like to make it. But
Okay.
somewhere down the line, I think with exams, with studying, I think it just became like such a comfortable thing to do, and I think that has sparked this meditative tea making process for me every day.
When did it start though? Like at which point you were like, I'm just gonna be this tea guru for the
Yeah,
rest of my
I
life?
was like, you know what? I like drinking this. I like making this because it's a process, right? It's not like instant. So I was like, just sometimes just the sound of tea, like water boiling, it's so like makes me so happy. So I just do it.
I
Sometimes,
mean,
yeah.
I agree. I love tea too. I mean, tea is life. We spill tea, we drink tea, right?
Yeah.
But with that said, of course, let's dive right into the actual questions. So, Nabila, tell us a bit about yourself, because I think what better way for the audience to get to know and for all of us to get to know as well. Being a youth leader, being an activist, what makes you such an amazing person? Because I see everything that you are doing for the community in Sri Lanka. So tell us a bit about yourself, and then you can follow that with why did you choose to become a youth activist and a youth leader?
All right, thanks, Evan. I think I'll start with I come from a peace building background, which means I
Right.
work in peace and reconciliation with young people. And I've been volunteering since I was really young. So, from girl guiding to activities in school
Wow.
and things like that. So, I think from that age, it just became like this learning curve for me. I didn't have all the answers, but I was lucky enough to have people who were willing to teach me, and also experiences that I was able to put myself into. I think from there, after school, especially, I joined this tour with an NGO around the island where we were doing workshops and also assemblies with young people on peace and reconciliation. I think that's what really sparked for me. And I think leaving that and then volunteering a bit more and then leading with Sisterhood Initiative, which is what I do right now. We have a group of young women that we work with when it comes to creating conversations with them. And I think now I have sort of learned that there's an intersection where you have peace and reconciliation topics, but
Right.
then there's also women that's connected to it. So that area is where I'm working right now, and
Right.
yeah. I think to answer the question, why did you choose to be an activist? I think I still don't know what an activist really means. I think we're all learning. And even my
Yep.
colleagues, when I ask them this question, they're like, I also don't know. But I know that they really work in their communities. I think it's someone who is accountable to the people who they are representing and but to the work that they're doing, and people who are honest and just stay true to the work. I think there's sometimes we think a lot about the intention of work, but sometimes the intention does not matter. It's about the impact. Who are you
Right.
hurting, who is benefiting from this work? I think an activist is someone who thinks about all of those things.
Wow, that's perfect. And you did touch on the sisterhood initiative part as well, which we will be getting into later now. Coming more on the activism part, you have clearly mentioned, that you are an offline activist. What sets you apart from, people who would in general, consider themselves to be activists? Because, I could share a post on my social media. I could maybe share a YouTube link, a Facebook link. I don't know, maybe go to one of the protests and then call myself an activist. But What sets you apart from all of that?
So first of all, I'm not the activist police, so I'm not going to police anyone or tell anyone that this is how you should do whatever. But I think what I have learned sort of the hard way is because I also have like a public Instagram account, and I was using it to sort of amplify some of the work I do or some of the messages that I talk about. And unfortunately, what happened was a lot of people mistook that and thought that, this is something I do online, like this is my online work. And then I got a lot of comments and messages saying, then why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't you talking about that?
Oh, yeah.
Then it was a little overwhelming for me. So I thought maybe it's better for me to just say it out in the clear that I don't work online, because there are online activists and that's a lot of work. You have to be online all the time and you have to always review what you're doing and post first and stuff like that. And that's not what I do. I don't have that skill set and I don't have that headspace as well. So I like to work in my offline sort of work. I like to work with people in face to face. And then, whatever from there, if I feel like I need to amplify this and share this with people, then I will put that and post online. But that's the thing, right? There are no like hard and fast rules as to this is how you
Absolutely.
have to do
Yep.
something. But again, you have to be accountable. You have to be honest. You have to think about the impact of the work. I think a lot of people do things very recklessly and then say, no, but I had the right intentions. And that's true, but sometimes you could have taken a few extra steps and thought, okay, maybe I could have, thought about a few more things before doing what I did.
Right. Well, you said, people have to think about and stuff before they do. And also, you talk, about how you do interact with people as well. So now coming on to, talking about interacting with people, I think, what better topic to than discuss about, the GGG and the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka that is happening at this very second. Were you a part of it? Did you, when this whole thing started happening, give us your initial thoughts on that as well, the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka? And were you, an avid participator in the protests? And
Right.
did your activism and, your youth leadership, did it show up for the crisis?
Right. So when before GGG happened, so that was, I think, one of the main, I think, breaking points was, I think, the Mirihana attacks or the Mirihana protests, where protesters were tear gassed and the police were active and things like that. During that time, I was actually working with Sisterhood Initiative and our girls. We were, and young women. We were painting murals in Colombo on representing minority women groups. So we were doing that with a bunch of South Asian artists. It's a group called Fearless Collective. So when we were doing that work, this suddenly happened, and then we realized we had to suddenly move into what do you call that? Uh, there were you suddenly can't. We had curfews and we had a state
Right.
of emergency.
Mm-mm.
Sorry, I just words just suddenly left
That's
my brain.
okay.
So we had state of emergency put in. We had curfews, and throughout all of that, we had to make sure those work was continuing, and we were taking care of the community. So when that ended, of course, we were always present at protests and things like that. But I was never an initial member at GGG or something like that. I always participated individually and in a personal capacity. And a few weeks back, we did a session on Muslim women's rights and Muslim women's struggles at Kota Gogama, the People's University. So we always try to see how can we connect what we're already doing to the wider audience and make it genuine work. So that's something that has always been working. Also, I work at Watchdog as well. Currently, Watchdog is like a research collective, and we
Yes.
fact check a lot of news. So from March, since I joined, to now, it has been like a real race, because we've been covering all the fact checks going on, the protests going on. We have this thing called a protest tracker, which we ended last week. And I think since the 30th of March, we have recorded 597 protests around the island. So that's a large number. That's a lot of work. So I've been very offline, but contributing in my
Right.
capacity. Yeah.
So you were not always an offline activist, but you did not have basically an option
Yeah.
but to become one. I think that's a very bold mark and statement that you have left in terms of becoming a youth activist and of course a youth leader. Now, talking about once again the current economic crisis, Nabila, let's talk a bit about politics. And I know,
Okay.
I think you clearly told me, you're not like the best person for that,
No,
but
no, no, no. I don't mind talking about politics. I think
yes,
everything is political, but I'm not really great at like legal jargon and
the
constitutional
yeah,
law and That's just something I
So if
don't
it,
get right.
yeah, so if it would come to politics, right, would you ever get into it? Because I know that you are doing actually, and I think we do need strong women, to represent different social issues in the country in a parliamentary setting as well, and in a political setting within the country. And I personally, I love your work. I'm honestly putting it out there, and I think if you do get into politics, you could make a change that has been long not wanted but needed within the Sri Lankan political system. So would you ever get into it?
I wouldn't, and these are my reasons. And I'm not saying it's a bad job or it's a hard. It's definitely a hard job. I think I have two main reasons. One is, it's very difficult. Like I said, it's hard. There is discrimination, there are restrictions and things like that.
But isn't being a youth activist and a leader difficult as well?
It is difficult, but that I'm going to go to my second point, which is
Okay.
I don't think I have the right skill sets for that job, and I know women who do. So for me, with the skill sets I already have, and with how I envision my future and my work in the community, I don't think that's where I'm going to do the best at to deliver work. So I feel like maybe my work in community building or like grassroots level work is so much more impactful for me with what I can do and what I have.
Right. Well, that makes perfect sense. And I think, yeah, I really wanted to get that answer out of you. And I think she put it out there. So is that question, something that you get often?
Yeah, I think people just assume that if you are a loud female and if you have like a lot of opinions, you should just join politics. And I think it's because of our current political figures, right? They have let us down so much that we expect that we like the bare minimum from people. So we're like, oh, you're a good person, be a politician. No, you can't. You need to know things, you need to have
Right.
experience. But I think we've been let down so much that anything is better than the other
We
option.
have been let down so much, which
Yeah.
is why we need people like you. So maybe, I don't know, keep that option open for later,
I
hopefully.
mean, I mean, the future is open. We'll see. But like just right now, I feel like my skill set is much better suited for other things.
Right. So, in your opinion, Nabila, do you think because even when the Rajapaksas and everyone are questioned, even by major media companies, as to if they had a direct correlation with the economic crisis in Sri Lanka, they always bring about COVID and this and that,
Mm.
instead of actually addressing their mistakes, right? So do you think, yes, in your personal opinion, right, you don't have to go with the mainstream or stereotypical
Yeah.
idea, do you think, yes, there are external factors affecting to it, or do we like entirely just put the blame on the government and the Rajapaksas in general?
Oh no, this government definitely failed us, and there are clear cut reasons why. I'm not saying COVID didn't have an impact or the war in the Ukraine didn't have an impact. Of course, all those external factors had an impact on all the countries, right? But we have to ask the question: how come Sri Lanka is here and not Maldives and not India and things like that,
Right.
right? And I think the main thing is, back in 2019, they did not increase taxes; they actually cut down taxes, right? And this was when economists were telling them, don't do it. We need money coming back into the country, right?
Right.
And but they went ahead with it. And then again, one of Gotabaya Rajapaksa's manifestos in the campaign was, I'm going to turn agriculture organic. I'm going to cut down all chemical fertilizers and we're going to go all full organic farming, right? But I think one of his plans was that it will take over for 10 years, but it happened overnight. So overnight, farmers lost everything that they had. I mean, we have plants which just grow only in chemical fertilizer,
That
right?
was ridiculous, right? I mean, think about that decision.
Yeah, I mean, we have to feed
Yeah.
22 million people in this country, and you can't do it if the yield is not even 30 or 40% of what they originally had, right? So, I mean, those were clear cut, obvious reasons that we were going to fail, but they took those decisions anyway. And on top of that, there were very racist things that were happening, and also communal riots, and not, I mean, like, of course, like I wouldn't say communal riot. It's more like planned things that were taking place. And so,
Right.
I mean, when you create so much of destruction, obviously things are going to fail. And that's what happened. And that's why we are here at this place right now. So, I mean, I can think of everything around the world, but I will definitely blame policy decisions that were taken when people clearly said don't take them.
Right. And I did see, you had an interview with NDTV and you were one of the participants there. And do you think, actually maybe NDTV is kind of being supportive towards the people? At the end of the day, many or major, media coverage did not show the peaceful part of the protests in Sri Lanka, right? They were really just
Yeah.
posting out the bad pictures. They were, like, oh my God, people are being so violent. Because I still remember, there's this picture of, I think, a middle-aged man with a breadstick.
Yeah.
It's on fire. I think you remember that as well. And that was, I guess, the most shared one as well. So people are having, I guess, the wrong idea. The people in, obviously, in other countries are having a wrong idea of how the protests are happening. From your experience, I don't know if you've had any, but why do you think the media coverage is, not showing the right thing or the proper narrative or the true narrative, instead of, but they're just putting out a false image, right, of the country? Do you think maybe the government, maybe at least by a small percent, they are bribing these companies to show out a false narrative?
Well, I don't know if they're bribing because I don't think we have evidence of that yet. But I think why media companies abroad do what they do is because sensationalism sells,
Right.
right? So that picture of the man at the protest in front of the whole parliament holding the breadstick, that picture is iconic. It sells. It was
Oh
on
yeah, tell
Vice
me about it.
Media. It
Mm-mm.
was on, I don't know if BBC had it, but everybody had it because it looked like we are a country in chaos, but it looked like we were just murdering each other on the road, you know.
Exactly, like,
So
yeah,
yeah,
setting buildings on fire and
yeah,
whatnot, right? Yeah.
yeah. I think what's really beautiful about GGG is that the protests were peaceful. It was like literally a village, right? Like a gama. There's a library. There's like a small hospital. And once when I went there, they were like, "This is a grama sevaka is living here. This is the post office." Like they have these
Wow.
little tents for everything, and
Mm-mm.
it's amazing. It's what people have come across and done. And there's a website that works great at the time when I logged in. I mean, everything has been running so smoothly. So it's why aren't people amplifying that? Obviously, the other version of things, the violence sells better. And I think in general, foreign media has been very irresponsible. I think even when we've been working and we've been very vocal about this as well, they will just fly in from the airport and just text us saying, "Hey, can you send us a voice note?" And then they'll go back. They don't cover, they don't look, and things like that. And I think a few of my colleagues have been very firm with some journalists when they've met them
Right.
at Gotagogam and said, "Look, cover these images, speak to these activists on the ground or these journalists, and they can help you. Right? We can help you cover really good
Oh, but they
points of
love
view."
taking things out of context, don't they?
They do, they do, they
Right?
do.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, but that's the sad part of it because right now our country really needs foreign money, and we also need foreign eyeballs. We need foreign attention to see what's happening because that adds the pressure to get things done. But it's sad that when things get out of context, that whole plot gets lost.
Right. You spoke about, yeah, we do need foreign currency. And I think, the new prime minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, he did something extremely awful, because Sky News interviewed and questioned him, about whether foreigners, if they should come to Sri Lanka and, experience the beauty of the country. And he said, if they want to, get involved in protests, if they want to hold placards and, just go about writing and whatnot, maybe they should come down. I think that set out a really bad image. Even the people who are planning, or maybe, they do plan, these visits months ahead. And maybe due to that specific answer, we would, lose many of the currency that we are about to get. Right. So what are your thoughts on that? And also, your idea of him being appointed as PM?
Yeah, I mean, this Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, what he's doing right now, he's undermining what the young people and what this generation and what everyone at the protests, young or old, are doing. That's what he's saying. He's saying, "Oh, if you want to hold a placard, then come." What is he doing? He's trying to make it a joke,
Yeah.
right? There's a protest site just outside Temple Trees saying "No deal, Gama," right? That's because he's known for making deals, and he's trying to create a youth task force or a task force to discuss issues. All these things are really stupid because why would any protester come and meet to discuss demands when not even 50% of the demands have been met?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
When you're not even helping me, why would I come and discuss about how you're hurting me or how you're not
Exactly.
helping me out? Right? It doesn't make any sense. And I think, on May 9th, when the pro government attackers came onto the Gotagogama site and, just attacked all the peaceful protesters that was in the site, and the police did nothing.
Right.
And that ended up with looting and like fire and like property
Mass
damage and
chaos.
things,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Mm-mm.
then right afterwards the previous prime minister resigns, and then immediately a few days later we have a new prime minister. This is not someone we voted for or we thought of. So I mean, I understand when the protesters at Gorago Gama say that they don't identify with this prime minister, because we didn't ask for this, right? This
Right.
just came
No.
out of nowhere.
Mm-mm.
So I think it's really important that when there is a big goal out there, to keep the eyeballs there, and there will be, temptations around, join the youth task force. We will hear you out, but no, you need to talk about the demands that we've already given you out first. So those things need attention too before we can talk about other stuff.
Right. And on May 9th, you touched on that topic as well. Where were you the moment that happened, and also when it hit the news? How did you find out about it? And give us your thoughts on the initial
Right.
feelings and emotions that you felt at that very
Right.
moment.
So my colleagues were there. They were covering the event. I had overslept, so I had stayed at home. So when May 9th hit at Watchdog, what we did was we immediately said, okay, we'll record everything that happens. So we were taking footage of anyone attacking anyone and saving those pictures and images and videos, because then we can use that to identify the perpetrators later. And then we published a few articles later on called Attack on Gotago Gama, before and after, right? So we have logged all of those things in, so that we have a clear an idea from just the images that are going on
Yes,
viral,
very much.
who is attacking who, and
Yeah.
who do they belong to, who is paying them, or who are they representing, right? So it's really obvious that they were all pro government supporters, and that's this is what they were doing. So that was my few days of that week. We were just doing that and trying to amplify those messages. So yeah, it was a hectic time. It also felt like, are we going back to violence? I think our country loves violence. We have cycles of violence all the time, right? But it's also important that the moment it happened, the village or the Gorago Gama was also rebuilt. And I think
Right.
that's a sign of, we won't let things go to where they were before. We will try to be better. And I think that's very, very important to me.
And as a youth activist, because you do call yourself an activist and a youth leader, did you feel compelled to go there on the 9th of May? Did you have the feeling of, I need to be there with my people?
Not really, because I felt like I could do more work where I was right now in recording things and logging things in. So
Okay.
I felt like, okay, maybe I should be here. And also, secondly, we didn't know what was happening, right, until it happened. So when the attack happened, we were like, oh God, what's happening? Of course, we had like signs of maybe this would happen.
Yeah.
But also, I was really worried for the safety of my friends who were already there. So, for example, two journalists who were there, who or reporters who were there, we were just hoping they would come home safely. And something they mentioned was, even when they were in the bus, they were like, don't use your phones, don't record anything, stay inside the bus, just don't put your hand out,
Yep.
don't do anything. Like, people would come into the bus and say, are you pro government? And any flinch and something bad would happen. So it was a very tense situation. So we were just happy that everyone got home and everyone was safe. But people were harmed, right? So when we
Right.
visited later, there were lots of people who were harmed, and they were trying to seek damages for that.
Right. Well, for anyone hopping on board, welcome to the show. You are with Relax Radio. This is the mic drop, a revolution of a generation. And for today's show, we have the incredible Nabeela Iqbal, who's sharing her thoughts, her opinions, her perspectives on not just the current economic crisis, but we will also be touching on the marginalized communities and the oppression, especially faced by the Muslim women in Sri Lanka. Before we get into that, I wanted to ask what are your thoughts on apart from the pro government supporters, obviously, the people who choose to stay silent, whether I guess participating in protests. You gave a laugh there. I'm really curious to know your answer, or sharing
Mhm.
related content on social media.
Okay. This is a loaded question. Here's why. Uh, I don't think I don't think everybody needs to be an activist. Everyone can, but I don't think everyone has to be.
I
But
share
that's a
content on my social media, so I
yeah.
don't call myself an activist though.
Yeah. So I guess your question is more like, why were people silent, right?
Yeah, why are
Mhm.
they still silent? I mean, I know there are people who I would consider sometimes to be privileged enough
Yeah.
to keep themselves
Yeah.
silent. So what do you think about that?
I think it was like, when it happened, it was like disappointing but not surprised. We always knew that there will always be part of our society who don't go through the same challenges and same obstacles, right? They will
Right.
always get perks, they will always benefit from whatever injustice is happening. So even when people were like, "Oh, we need to be peaceful," but you can't have peace if there is no justice, right? If you're not
Wow.
going to think about
Yep.
people being people receiving things in the same way, then you can't say be peaceful and be happy and have share positive thoughts. Things are not positive, people
Can
are
you just create a ban out of what you said? There cannot
no,
be
I'm
peace
pretty sure
without justice.
I'm
That
pretty
that
sure
was
somebody else
amazing.
said that, but I mean these are really really serious learnings, right? Because
Yep.
um and that was what was happening. So I think on social media there was such an uproar, like, why are you not posting about this? Why are you posting your cafe photos, for example? And almost at one point, like, forcing influencers to share the issues of the protests, right?
Oh, yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
I mean, here's what happens, right? You force them, then they'll post it for a while and it'll go back, right? So do you want that? Or it, it, those are other debates that we can have later. But for me, I I was disappointed, of course, when people weren't having that same enthusiasm. But it's also not surprising, even because it sort of is how our society is structured, and that's
Yep.
part of the problem as well, right? You will always have someone who's benefiting, so it's comfortable for them not to say anything.
Absolutely, I do agree. And you did touch on influences as well.
Mm.
Now, I don't want to name names, obviously, but there was like this incident that happened the past couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken, right? One influencer did post of her, at a sushi restaurant with, a plate of food and all that. I don't know if you saw that
I
one.
didn't see that one.
All
I'm
right,
so
okay.
sorry.
I got a smile from you. I was like,
No,
okay,
I
maybe she
haven't seen
knows.
it. No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So she posted that, and it was a paid promotion.
Oh, okay.
And all right, so there was this comment from one person saying, that was very insensitive of her to do that, because
Okay.
someone, maybe it could be a parent scrolling through social media,
Right.
not being able to provide a proper meal for
Mm.
his or her kid that day, or
Okay.
maybe a child, right? Especially influencers have a lot of children following them.
Mm.
I mean, children as in, like, youth
Yeah.
and teens and
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone. And maybe they are not able to afford a proper meal, and
Yeah.
them seeing that, that's what the comment was. Maybe you could try and promote something else, is
Yeah.
what the comment mentioned. So do you think on the influencers part, it's totally fair that the person would do that? Because at the end of the day, that person is earning from that, right?
Yes.
That's their career. And so just give us a little bit of
Okay, so I
opinion or
mean,
thoughts about
I
that.
have mixed thoughts about this because I also think yes, they need to earn that way. The restaurant needs to earn that way. True, those are all correct, right? And I won't say stop your job and like don't make money, right? But I also understand where the country is right now. People are starving to death. Like we have a huge food security problem. That's why a lot of us, like, even though I work in like a more rights based work, even my work is like now moving towards like relief work where we are trying to provide things and dry rations for people and stuff like that. So everything is changing, right, in what we are working in. So I understand that as well, and I think we have to, I think why this problem comes is, this is just my opinion, I think people don't know how to be sensitive on the internet.
Right.
They don't know how to get their point across but also relate it to their audience, right? So if they thought about relatability, they would know that this is not something that would do well at a time like this. And also even marketing campaigns and agencies by corporate sector or like by um, people who need to make money sort of don't take that into account as well. So they don't look at these different sensitivities. So I mean, I don't do a lot of paid promotions on my account, but from the very few that I do take on this year, I've been very clear with them that a proportion of what I make will definitely go for meal sharing and getting dry rations for people and things like that. Because
See, yeah, that's the difference though.
but that's the thing, right?
That's
So
the difference.
that's the thing. So I know that everyone can't afford to do that as well, because that is also a very privileged thing. I can't be like, hey, put slash 50% of all your earnings and put it into other people. That's also
Yes.
like very very high and mighty of me to say that. So I know not everyone can do that, but definitely we can also raise awareness of this crisis in this of our country right now as well, which I don't think everyone will do and also can do.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much, Nabila, for that, I guess, more than perfect answer. And I will be touching a bit about that
Okay.
later as well. But right now, we are moving on to a short break. We will be right back. You are watching The Mic Drop, a revolution of a generation on Relax Radio. Welcome back to the show. You are watching Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. My name is Evan Ace, and this is The Mic Drop, a revolution of a generation. And on today's episode, well, she's no stranger to anyone watching. This is Nabeela Iqbal. Nabeela, once again, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for, agreeing to do this.
Thanks for having me, Evan. I'm having a lot of fun.
Definitely same here. As I say, it's a really fun and interactive conversation, especially, even though we are, talking about important topics. Now, coming back to that whole influencer thing, right? Having gone through your profile,
Yeah.
I do see that you do paid promotions as well,
Yep.
but it's very different. I feel like you are more sensitive towards what you are doing. So
Mm.
what sets you apart from all of the other influencers or the one I did mention about? Because do you get companies approaching you to do
Yeah.
food promotions as well?
Yeah, I think the thing for me is I don't think I'm very different from other influencers. I think the only difference is like my job role is much more different, right? I work in a very activist sort of field and they work in a more content creation sort of field. So for me, the my Instagram is important for me to share those stories, and for them, they will try to sell brands and things like that, which is what they're getting paid for. That's their job, and some of them are really good at it as well. I do a few paid promotions. I don't do a lot, also because my time does not allow me to, and also I think for companies also it's much sometimes more profitable to get a more experienced influencer or content creator as opposed to hiring me, and I'm completely fine with that. And yeah, so with the few I do take on this year, especially, we've set like different terms and conditions and things like that to be more
Right.
sensitive about what's happening in the country. Yeah, I think it's important to be sensitive, but also I sometimes don't know the rules of the industry like that. I don't want to like tell people how to do their job,
Right.
but definitely I think for me, I see social media as something to tell stories with. And I feel even if you're selling a brand or an item, like people don't tell stories anymore. And that sort of annoys me. Like, it's just, hey, buy this product. But okay, what
Yep.
does that,
Mm-mm.
what's your
That's very
connection?
true.
What's your
Yep.
connection to the product? Like tell me a story about it. And I don't think a lot of people do that. But maybe if you did do that, that could probably break some of those barriers and create more empathy with your audience as well. So, and then that would end up being more sensitive to the current situation as well, because you do have to keep restaurants running, you do need to keep ads running, but like how do you be more relatable?
Right, that makes a lot of sense. So I think that this set you apart from many other influences, and I see that you are very much I guess aware of feelings and emotions, and I think that you are very heavy on that as well. With that said, of course, moving on to I guess one topic I really wanted to touch on was the sisterhood initiative. So from A to Z, tell us what it is and how you have contributed to this organization.
Right. So I was volunteering as a peace builder from the beginning. And then something I realized was quite later on that my own community of Muslim women, we don't really have a lot of spaces to discuss these topics and like, things surrounding our own rights. And then we realized, okay, I did a video about this talking about it and I just posted it on the internet. And
Right.
then so many Muslim women reached out and said, we would love to join something like this and we would like to have a space. And then from there, we had a meeting at one of my friends' houses. And then we ended up having another meeting in Kandy in a school. And
Wow.
then what happened was the pandemic hit. Then we realized we can't keep meeting in person like this, right? So then what happened was we tried to create like an online group through social media and started working together, started planning
Yes.
campaigns and things like that to raise awareness about a lot of the issues that we were having. And then 2.5 years in now, so for June it'll probably be like 2.5 years, we've done a lot of work for women's representation, especially of minority women and also marginalized groups. So we've done a lot of work in that field and try to create more conversation about us and try to create more representation about us in the mainstream media and also
Right.
just in families for people to talk about us.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, can we get to know a bit more in detail about what Sisterhood Initiative has done, and how has your contribution has been like, and have you seen a major changes and good things that have come out of this?
Right. So I founded this like 2.5 years ago, and we have a small team that's working together. And right now, I lead the operations on it, but there's a few more others who do, like the comms, the communications part of it, and the finance part of it, and the administration part of it. So we have a membership about 200 young women that's just mostly online on
Okay.
a group, but we try to do things physically or in person as well, right? So for the moment, when it comes to peace building, we have had issues, we have discussed issues of interfaith conversations and also intra-faith conversations. So that's like within different faith groups and also inside one faith group. So for example, in the
Right.
Muslim community, we have Boras, Malays, Maimans, and so many different kinds of races. So we've had all those women coming together and talking to each other, about topics like the hijab or our right to wear what we want, our clothing, and things like that. Last year, especially, we ran a training online for about 50 young women. We had to shortlist it to about 50 and 60, and we ran a training with them on topics of Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act reforms. That's our personal law reforms. We had on interfaith conversations, intra-faith conversations, and also gender equality. So those are some things that are really important to us when we had
Wow.
those conversations going on. This year in particular, we've tried to work with all the crisis that's happening in our country. So we did the big murals in Colombo. That's one behind the old Rio Cinema and also one behind Salvation Army of two women, so a Muslim girl and a Christian girl, just holding hands and looking to the future
Wow.
in like empathetic leadership. So we wanted to show the people how we see ourselves, so they may see us the same, right? So that's what we did on that front. We After the um, for Easter attack remembrance this year, we had an interfaith breaking fast event during Ramadan. So we broke fast with the Christian community at St. Paul's Church, and we shared about our thoughts and we listened to them, and we spoke about the Easter attacks in a very interfaith sort of way. We also had members from Katankudi who had joined, especially people who had been affected by the Prevention of Terrorism Act that
Right.
in which you can arbitrarily be arrested. That means arrested just based on suspicion. And we had that conversation going on as well. This year, luckily, before all these crises and fuel crisis, everything hit, we were able to travel a bit more. So this year, we were able to go to Eastern Province to do some workshops on how to use social media effectively and also learn from them about MMDA reforms that are happening. Also in Puttalam, we visited one of our partner or sister organizations who we work very closely when it comes to law reforms on,
Right.
what are their best practices and what can we learn from them in these things, because we like to work with women's groups that are very similar in the work we do, so that we can share knowledge and be a sense of support. um, that's a nutshell of what we've done, but if you want me to go on, we can do that as well.
Well, I think yes, Sisterhood Initiative has done amazing things, and you do have a big following there as well. And I just want to put it out then. First of all, thank you for bringing up something like that, and also, I wish you all the best in the future programs that you have organized for the
Thank you so
Sisterhood
much.
Initiative.
Thank you.
And you did, bring on the topic of Easter bombings, which is something I did, talk to you about as well, because when that happened, right? I'm really curious to know, because me being a Catholic myself,
Mm,
and I just wanted to touch on that topic in a very emotional sense, because the people did really start, because I can relate to this, because some of my
yeah.
Muslim friends, they stopped talking to me because they felt guilty, right?
Mm,
And I had to approach them and say, you know what, this is not what it is. Terrorism and a religion, they are two different things, right? So
yeah.
tell me a bit about your experience on that level, because did you also have maybe your friends of other religions, people who are not Muslims, basically treating you any different, or maybe trying to make you feel guilty for it? So let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Evan. And also, being a Catholic, I mean, for you, I mean, thank you for telling me that, and thank you for creating this safe space for us, right? We did this in 2020 in our group as well, where one of my friends who is a Catholic, who's like one of my best friends in university, we sat down and we had a conversation with each other, and we let the group listen to us talk about this. And she
Right.
spoke about how she lost a friend, and how the next day her family felt differently towards Muslims. And it's all very sensitive, right? We hold no grudges against people personally, but with these things happen, right? And she was talking about, and we wanted to focus on what the Catholic community went through, because that's what the Easter attacks was about. It was
Yes.
about what the Catholic community went through. But unfortunately, because of the racist agenda in this events as well, it also became the Muslims acting as the scapegoat, or let's put the blame on them because the the terrorists who came from them also belong to the same faith, right? Um, but so many years have passed and we still don't have a perpetrator for the crime.
Yeah.
We have these pages and pages of reports, right, of committees and submissions and hearings, but why have we still not put anybody in jail, right?
Yeah, that's the
um,
bigger question, right?
that's the question which should
Mm-mm.
have been answered and which everyone should have been focusing on, especially right after Easter attacks in 2019. But unfortunately, what it became was, let's create division within the community and let's make people hate each other, right? And I think yes, even as a Muslim, it was very terrifying. I know a lot of my Muslim friends had sent Christian friends apology notes, like, I'm sorry that
See,
this
that's what
happened.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
because I think that was the sense of like fear in
Yeah.
us. Like we were just so
Mm-mm.
scared, because we had to also understand, like, our country is used to violence, right? We've had attacks and riots, and we've had the Digana attacks previously and things like that. So we know how perpetrators, people who are suspicious of each other, treat each other, right? So we were very worried. Um, Also, we have a law in the country called the PTA, or the Prevention of Terrorism Act, in which, it was brought in many years ago, and it was used during the war also to arrest people who they are suspicious of, right? The problem here is you can literally arrest anybody just based on suspicion, and
Yes.
you don't really need grounds for it, right? And when you get arrested, there is no bail. So until the judge literally sends you off, there is no solution to it. And there are so many people, so many families, so many Muslim families that are still in jail because of for absurd reasons, right?
Wow.
There are people who from Eastern Province who are in jail because of the PTA, because they have been accused of sewing the terrorists' clothes, right?
Okay.
And once the investigators actually came into this to the house and actually checked with the sewing machine to see if there was anything inside it. So I mean, that's the absurdity of this law and the way authorities use it, right? So it's very scary, it's very dangerous, and I think that's why I think there was so much of heightened fear among everybody. And why I feel so emotional about this is because the focus should have been on getting justice for the Catholic community at the time. Um, for example, all the lives lost, all the families that are still going through it without answers, and that is just so devastating to not know what happened um, to your family members.
Yeah, it very much is. And Muslims, I believe, I think you did agree to it as well, already being a marginalized and, falling under the minority
Mm.
category. I think that the whole Easter bombing thing, right? It escalated that, right?
Yeah.
And then more stereotypical ideas and stigmatizations around the Muslim community started to come up. And it's literally absurd, right? Because it does not take a religion to commit a heinous crime. When you think about the shootings in America, right?
Mm.
I mean, that
Yeah.
was an act of violence. I mean, killing 19 children,
Yeah.
it did not take a religion for someone to do that, right? It's your personal psychology. That's
Mm.
where, that's what needs to change. Maybe the conversation should be more about mental health than religion.
Right. I agree. I also think in the conversation of Easter attacks, since we have so many pages of this investigative report, those need to be analyzed, right? Those
Very
need to be
much.
read,
Mhm.
and we need to
Yep.
see, was there a political influence? Was
Absolutely.
there external influences? Because definitely there were people who knew and did nothing, or who could have known but didn't take the steps to know about it, or turned a blind eye. So those are things that definitely need to be answered.
How long do you think, it would take for that change to happen, and also for the Muslim community, to come out of being considered marginalized or a minority?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think mostly because we see in our country like these cycles where we go through a conflict and we don't talk about it, so it happens again. When a conflict happens, we need to also know, we need to put in place like mechanisms where our systems will be so resilient that even if this happens again, we can fight it, right?
Right.
This is really bigger than you and me coming up with solutions, for example, right? A lot of these issues are very systemic. They are in the government, they are taken by, their decisions taken by ruling parties, right? So this is a huge system that needs a lot of change, laws that need to be changed, and then maybe we can find answers. But right
Yep.
now,
You don't see that happening anytime soon.
uh, I don't know. I think that's,
Okay.
I have a feeling it might not, because I need to manage my personal expectations. But I think where I'm coming from is, regardless of what happens, how do I convey the information correctly to my community and make sure they understand it and make sure they're ready for whatever that happens, because they need to work together with everybody and have knowledge of the issues.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. For anyone hopping on board, welcome to the show. This is the Mic Drop, a revolution of a generation on Relaxed Radio Beyond Frequencies. My name is Emanes, and this is the one and only incredible Nabeela Iqbal, who's sharing, I guess, her opinions, her perspectives, and her thoughts in a really, sensible manner. So, Nabeela, thank you so much for, giving out all of those wonderful answers. Now, moving on, I wanted to touch on, as a Muslim woman in the Sri Lankan community, right? How has your experience been, from the moment you stepped into the world and growing up, and as a child and as a teen and now as a youth, how has your experience been?
Well, I also have to acknowledge that I come from a pretty middle class family. I have a lot of privilege, so and also I wasn't very aware of lot of the things that were happening around me, or the laws or anything, right? So I think when I learned things, it was quite late in my or considerably later in life, right? So maybe when I left school, by talking to people and talking to law students, only I learned about these things. But then I realized it's actually not a privilege to not know things. Sometimes you don't know things because people don't want you to know things,
Oh
right?
yeah, do you think there's a stereotype as, if you are privileged, then you are not aware?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, if you if things don't bother you the same way, then
Oh yeah,
you don't need to know about things, right?
but
Because it
doesn't the
doesn't affect
society
you.
treat all Muslims the same way though? Even if you do not come from a privileged background, or whether you do come from a privileged background, isn't it the same?
It is the same, but there are some intersections, right? There are some distinctions or like separations, right? For example, let's take something like equality in divorce in the Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act, right? So that's the MMDA that we want reforms for. So some of the things that we ask for reforms in, a lot of the upper middle class families in the Muslim community don't want those things because those
Right.
work very well for them,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
For example, we have a Qazi court judge who can be anyone, a man out of good character. He just gets 15,000 rupees a month, which means he's very susceptible to taking bribes from people, right? So we have this person of such position of power, right? And most of the time, there's so much of inequality that happens in the Qazi courts, right? But a lot of the well to do families are quite okay with that because what does that mean? They don't have to really go into the court to get their judgment. They can invite the Qazi to their own house and let them sign a document or whatever and get things done, right? But this is not a luxury afforded to more low income families or people without connections and things like that, right? So there are those class differences. Sometimes a lot of these things do become a class issue because you see a lot of people being quiet about it because it
Yes.
benefits them, right?
Mm-mm.
Like
Very
our
much.
influencer conversation before, right?
Yes.
They benefit, so they don't find a fault with it, and they accuse us of causing problems, right? So I mean, going back to your question on, being a Muslim woman, I feel like a lot of, I think we mentioned this at the Gota Gogama conversation also. We face issues because we are women, because of gender equality
Yeah.
issues, or gender inequality, sorry, and we face issues because we are Muslim, so we have racial discrimination and things like that. And also, being a young Muslim woman, like our age also matters because uh, when just before entering a marriage or being married early, for example, in the MMDA, there is no specified age of marriage, like a minimum age. So you can have really young children also below 16 or 14 years of age being married off, right? And our signature is not required on a marriage contract, which means you can easily have forced marriages, which happen. So because we
Right.
speak to these girls who've come out of forced marriages, and it's really difficult for them to come out of that trauma, right? But you have the same members in our community who gaslight them and say, "Oh, these don't happen because these are not Islamic." But if it's not Islamic, then which it's not, we need to protect it and make sure our laws are also just and represent our religion perfectly,
Right.
right? So that's the conversation that needs to happen, but sometimes it just gets roadblocked here and there. And a lot of my colleagues that I work with not just in Colombo, but from Puttalam, Katangudi, and down south, and in Kilinochimana areas, right, Vavnia areas. um, our basis is that this is a law that allows bad people allows bad people to do bad things, right? Because there are so many loopholes in it, right? It's not a true representation of the faith we believe in, and therefore, especially as Muslims, we don't want something
Yeah.
unjust, right?
Mm-mm.
We want it reformed so we can have gender equality in our homes. So when children see parents being treated the same way when they go into the world, they do the same thing, right?
Yes.
That's what we want. So I mean, so going back to the question of a Muslim woman, yes, in our laws we see us being treated differently, us not having a voice. We see right after a conflict, Muslim women being treated differently. For example, after Easter attacks, the temporary ban on face veils, right? But right now in the pandemic, all of us are wearing masks, right? So
Okay.
it's now not
Hmm.
an issue of national security. But we never consulted Muslim women in 2019 to ask them, especially women who covered, to ask them how do they feel.
So at that point, you did feel oppressed.
As even though I don't wear it, I felt like my sisters who wear it weren't consulted.
Right.
It was men who made the shots, right? And that's not fair on them. So our clothes are being policed, our bodies are being policed. So who is taking these decisions for us in our marriages, in our life, in the law, and especially after conflict or some kind of racial injustice happens, right? So all of these things, when you look at it together, it's a horrible soup. So sometimes it's really important for us to talk about those things and bring awareness to them.
Yes, that's very true. And thank you so much for that answer, because I know it is, in fact, a very, very sensitive topic, Nabila. And I wanted to touch a bit on, what you said, and also being a youth activist, especially an offline activist and a youth leader. I believe, there are other communities as well, just like the Muslims, who are marginalized. They are a minority, and also they are very much oppressed. Do you only advocate for the Muslims, or also are you, advocating, especially, let's talk about the Tamils
Mhm.
and also the LGBTQ community?
Right. So in my in our organization, we take a specific stance and work only with Muslim women in solidarity with other women as well.
Okay.
Right. So that's just to save our energy and our time and to be more specific in the work we do to get good results. Right. But in my personal opinion, what I've realized is there is no one issue that stands alone. All of our issues are connected. So whether when one any community is being marginalized or oppressed, none of us are doing better, right?
Right.
So all of our issues are connected. So whether it's climate justice or whether it's the rights of LGBTQ people, QI people, if it's the right of minorities, whether it's Tamil or Muslim, and then Muslim women or Tamil women, right?
Yeah.
All of these
Very
issues are
much.
connected, and there's so much for us to learn from each other. We can disagree, we can agree, we can believe in their fight, we cannot believe in their fight, but we can't deny human rights based on
Anyone's.
personal issues. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, you were mentioned on Amnesty International and UN Women Asia. So how did that happen? Tell us a little bit of a background story on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think UN Women Asia mostly they reached out to me because they were doing some gender equality events that year, and they wanted to sort of promote that event, and I was happy to do that, and they reached out to a few grassroots activists, and that's how that happened. Amnesty International and the UN Secretary General and Voice on Youth, that office, they were honoring like I think 10 activists around the world in 2020 for young human rights defenders that were working in the face of the pandemic. So that's how that came in. I think they saw the work that was done and saw the value in it and thought that it's important to give young people credibility in a time like that when we were working so hard.
Yes, very much. And also, I wanted to touch a bit on, you did talk a lot about women. You did
Mhm.
emphasize, the women part. So, what do you first of all, consider yourself a feminist?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a really it's a broad term, and there's so much of meaning behind it. I also think for me, just being a feminist is not enough. I think of myself as an intersectional feminist. What that means is we take account all the issues around us, because the feminist movement started, or as a movement, it started mostly in white America between upper class suburban women, right? Or
Right.
America or like Western parts, right? So their struggle is not my struggle because I can't identify my issues
Your
with their pain.
experiences are completely
It's
different.
not. So l- with the years, with the first wave, the second wave, the third wave, and all these waves we have, right? What happened is this movement grew. And when it grew, it included every woman's representation. That's why it took some time for women in the Arab region to join, women, Hispanic women, Latina women, or women of color, persons of color. For them to join, it took time. And where it's right now, it's more intersectional. It takes account climate justice, racial justice, the Black Lives Matter movement, because you can't talk about just gender equality only because unless you connect it to all other issues like mental health and everything.
Right.
So
But what sets you apart from, being a feminist and a misandrist? What are the key differences that you are seeing yourself?
I think um, I think you explained to me the meaning what misandry means, and I think it's the act of hating men, right? And
Yep.
I think it's why feminism sets this apart for me is because it helps me understand that men and women are equal, genders are equal, and then we need to show that respect, right? We need to show respect regardless, because the feminist movement is built for me on love and care and empathy. So
Right.
once we create that space, then it's something to dismantle power. So when you
Yes.
hate women, when you hate men, that's all powerful things. That those are things that go against what the movement, what intersectional feminism sort of stands for.
Right. I think Nabila made her stance very clear on that. And that was, one of the questions I was really curious to ask you about. But unfortunately and sadly, we have come to the end of this program. Nabila, I've absolutely loved this
Uh,
conversation. But before we say our goodbyes, give us your final thoughts.
I think, especially from talking today and listening to you and also speaking on this platform, right? I think I feel like it's so important to speak to each other,
Yes,
to
very
listen
much.
to each other, to hold different thoughts, to agree to disagree, and also just make sure you're respectful when you're sharing your opinions. And I had a really good time today, even though
That's amazing to
I
hear.
was nervous coming in. So I was like, oh no, I don't know what how the questions are gonna go. But yeah, I'm happy to be here, Evan, and thanks for having me.
Wonderful. It has been an absolute pleasure because, the moment you walked in, you had this really bubbly, I guess, persona and aura about you. So thank you so much for bringing that persona and also for sharing, much needed ideas, opinions, and perspectives on the mic drop, a revolution of a generation, because that is what this program stands for. And with that said, folks, we are wishing you a fantastic Sunday ahead. My name is Evanese, and of course, this is once again Nabeela Iqbal. We are signing out. Have a great weekend.